In 1960, you were 13 years old, and the sit-in movement begins in Greensboro, North Carolina, and really galvanizes not just young people, but all kinds of people, not just around the United States. It reverberates around the world. First of all, what was the sit-in movement, and what impact did it have on you?
Sit-in movements has started because of different student activists, university and college students, in some cases high school students, were fed up that they could not eat at the lunch counters. And they started a sit-in movement to challenge that. And of course, it spread across the South. Many of them were arrested, imprisoned, brutalized as a result. But it just resounded across the South. And it would go from Black university and college campuses to another. It was that kind of courage and braveness that earned them the respect of an older generation and a younger generation. You know, of course, the newspapers in Hattiesburg and other places were covering it in a negative light, and you couldn't get a lot of news about it, you know, but the Black train porters who were traveling on the train to different parts of the United States would bring back Black newspapers and Jet magazine. And of course, we could read about it and see pictures of it and get a whole new take on what it was really about.
And what effect did those stories have on you? The fact that there were these young people, not too much older than you, who were making change in this world.
I immediately felt there was something that I wanted to be a part of. And if I ever got the opportunity, that I would. Out of that student sit-in movement sprung up a number of Black organizations, one of which was the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC. And so, of course, when SNCC sent organizers to Hattiesburg, Mississippi, that gave me the opportunity to get involved.
I think it was 62.
Yeah.
Because in 1962, I think it was Hollis Watkins, Curtis Hayes, MacArthur Cotton, and Bob Moses arrived in Hattiesburg.
Right.
Signaling in many ways the beginning of the modern-day civil rights struggle in Hattiesburg. Can you tell us about the effect that these SNCC workers had on your town and on you?
Hattiesburg had always had an active civil rights movement. But as you said, with the arrival of SNCC, it just took things to a whole different level, because you're talking about a group of organizers. When they came into the community, they had to demonstrate that they were serious, that they had the staying power, that they weren't going to cut and run. And that was just something that impressed me immeasurably.
And what did it mean for them to be organizers? What exactly were they doing in the community?
Most of it at that time was around voter registration, getting Blacks to become enfranchised as voters, which was a very dangerous thing to be doing.
Why?
Because it could get you jailed, it could get you killed, it could get you run out of town.
Because the act of voting represented a threat to the system, to the entrenched system.
Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about those SNCC folks, because Bob Moses, of course, is an icon of the civil rights movement. He's someone who is regarded as being one of the leaders, of course, of SNCC at the time. You had a great deal of admiration for these SNCC workers. What qualities did they have that so impressed you?
One is that they were similar in age to myself, and they just had something that was rock solid about them. The way they carried themselves, the way that they would not take no for an answer, the way that they could knock on door after door after door over and over again and would just not take no.
You write in your book, Eyes Have Seen from Mississippi to Montreal, quote, "I was impressed with the courage and commitment of the SNCC workers, their abilities to connect the dots required to rise above fear and paralysis and calm the nervous gathering, to succinctly showcase the small, doable acts of courage."
Exactly. They just didn't give up. They had an approach which won people over. And people who were afraid to come forward eventually came forward because of the respect that they gained for these people who were so determined and who did not let disappointment grind them down. If at the end of a week or a month of door knocking, if they had only one person who would join them at the courthouse in an attempt to register to vote, that was a victory to be built upon.
And they so impressed you, of course, that you decided to join them. You joined their campaign to recruit voters.
Well, I started to go to some of the meetings, and I would go to the office that they worked out of just to hang out and watch them and socialize with them. One day, that Sandy, who was the coordinator,
Sandy Lee,
who was the coordinator of the Hattiesburg office, just said to me, well, you hang around here all the time. So are you going to do something or are you just going to hang around?
Right.
Right. And he took me under his wings and educated me about the layout of the office and what the project was about and the strategies. And he would give me small tasks that drew me in. And then when the opportunity arose, he wanted me to meet Bob Moses, and he introduced me to Bob Moses. And Bob said, Sandy can't stop talking about you. Sandy says you might be interested in becoming a field secretary for SNCC. And I said, absolutely.
You were 15 years old.
Yeah.
When you think back, you must have been a remarkable 15-year-old to be given that kind of responsibility. The fact that someone of the stature of a Bob Moses, of Sandy Lee, would have that kind of faith in you to carry out the task that they assigned you.
It's truly amazing. Not exactly sure what they saw in me, but I certainly didn't want to disappoint.
What do you think they saw in you? You're now approaching 80 years old, and looking back at that young 15-year-old Fred Anderson, what qualities did that young Fred Anderson have?
Well, first of all, they obviously could see that I was well-read in Black history and other subjects. And also, they were looking for young Blacks who could help carry the water of the movement. In fact, who could be the backbone of the movement.
And so you become a field secretary. What did that mean? What did the job entail?
Bob had said to me, you can't be in Hattiesburg because you would bring so much potential for harassment and economic reprisals against your family. So you'll have to go to Greenville, Mississippi.
So as a 15-year-old, you relocate to Greenville, Mississippi.
Yep.
Your dad was okay with that? How does that even happen that a 15-year-old is allowed by their parents to go 2 hours away to work as part of the civil rights movement?
My dad wasn't enthusiastic about it. He did his best to talk me out of it, but in the face of my determination, he relented. And of course, my mother was deceased. If my mother had been alive, I don't think I would have had the fortitude to do it. I would not have been able to disobey her wishes.
So you left school for this?
I did, yeah.
Wow.
And when you say, what does a SNCC field secretary entail? One of the things that was notable about SNCC as a civil rights organization, it was the first organization that had workers, field secretaries, that it embedded in Black communities. The goal was to live in the community, to become part of the community. In order to do that, I was housed with a Black family, the Turner family, which had agreed to house me. For people to take that chance of housing you, you had to demonstrate that you were serious about your business and that when things got tough, you were not going to cut and run.
Because this was dangerous work that you were involved in.
Well, this was extremely dangerous work. There was harassment all the time, and the possibility of death was always present. When you became a field secretary for SNCC, your salary was $10.
A week?
Yeah, $9.56 after taxes.
Right.
Right? And so your maintenance was intertwined with that of Black families. I mean, because they fed you, with the Black barbershops who cut your hair, with the Black doctors who gave you free medical care. And it was not unheard of for a SNCC worker to have to move on or be relocated. Because if a Black family judged you not serious about what it was you were doing, they were not going to take the risk of housing you. They would call a SNCC office and say, get him out of here.
We were talking about how dangerous this work was. Were you ever scared doing this work?
I was scared all the time. Absolutely.
How did you deal with that fear? And I just want to read this comment that I think Sandy Lee, the Hattiesburg SNCC director, had once said. He said, "Fear can be your best friend. Keep it close to you. It's an early warning system that has nothing to do with not doing, but how to do it." Talk a little bit about what that means to you, that what Sandy Lee said about fear?
It would be unrealistic, especially for someone who's grown up Black in Mississippi or the South, not to know what fear is, but we persevered. If fear had been something that prevented us from making progress, God help us. So I took my breathing lessons every day. I thought about what I had to do. I also always remained conscious of what it was that I was asking people in Greenville and other Black communities to do. They had to see me stare down my fears if I was asking them to step up.
You've been listening to a clip of In Bed with the Elephant with me, your host, Adrian Harewood. Be sure to check out the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, iHeartRadio, and YouTube. And please be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast and write a review. We love hearing from you.